Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets wind down their season, but boy, are there key dates coming around the corner for the Nets and the NBA at large, plus that little thing called the NCAA Tournament Championship. We dive in, coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And, of course, remind you, go ahead and get all your favorite teams, probably the Locked On Nets, by getting over to the daily newsletter. It's a one-stop shop for the team guide and league-wide coverage as well from some great personalities all across the NBA. Head over to LockedOnDaily.com. And, Doug, season's winding down here. Brooklyn Nets will get back on the court Tuesday night against the Pelicans, but there's a lot of things as these last few games happen for Brooklyn that are going to matter in a big way for their offseason and really the next couple of years ahead.
Yeah, 4 more games left. They've thrown in the white towel. I mean, Keon Johnson's resting. Cam Johnson's already out. D'Lo's out. Yeah, got to rest. And then Claxton's going to be back, but they clearly, wherever they feel like they are going to end up in the tank standings, they're not going to put in their best foot forward here against the Pelicans. It'll probably be the case all the way through. Maybe a few of these guys kind of get back in, but 4 games left. The Pelicans on Tuesday, Thursday against the Hawks, Friday against the T-Wolves. That game will matter for the T-Wolves probably. And then Sunday against the Knicks. And that one could matter for the Knicks. I need to look real quick. But
yeah, I don't think
all
it,
in all,
likely, but yeah.
then all in all, the Nets season, is never mind. It doesn't matter it's not going to matter for the Knicks. Yeah. By and large, the Nets season is pretty much over, I would say. And maybe it never got started, and depends where you feel about on sort of like where they were and just get where they started to where they finished. But I think now it's very clear that based on what they did last game and what they're signaling they're going to do the rest of the way, that it's tanking. They might call it a youth movement. That's a nice marketing department spin on we're going to go ahead and lose these games. And I think we're kind of just the turtles trudging away toward Sunday when the season will end. And there's some other gates we're going to look at. But we kind of knew that from the beginning that this was the sort of season the Nets were signing up for. We understood that a tanking season means just losing. But I think now you can definitely tell the tide is completely swung here in, this just doesn't matter even in the slightest.
Well, yeah, and it's funny too for different reasons when you talk about those last handful of games, right? From a Pelican standpoint, well, where are they? Well, they're locked into one of those top spots, so they know that the odds in terms of being fourth there, and maybe you want to try to flip yourself over top of Charlotte, not going to happen in all likelihood. So it doesn't really matter for them. And the Knicks game in the last day of the season doesn't really matter for them. Now they're already locked into a playoff position, but it's a reminder too, for a number of different reasons. The games at the end of the season for the NBA don't matter. So it's a bad look across the board. And then Brooklyn going ahead and going from a toe maybe in the tank waters to just fully up to your chest. Let's go ahead and get freezing in these waters. They chose to do that late here in the season. And so it makes it a little bit easier to spend some time taking a broader look at where we're going to head as the regular season winds down. One of the things, too, obviously, is we record this on Monday night. I keep track of the days. You're going to have the national championship going off the college level as well. And ironically, you don't get any Cooper flag because Duke gets taken out. You had the chalk Final Four. That's awesome. But you end up with a player and a name that you would not have had, at least nobody else did, I don't think, 45th overall on Tankathon's big board in one Walter Clayton Jr., the point guard for Florida. Now, he's on the older side, so it's not something that you would look at the Brooklyn Nets and say, hey, 22-plus-year-old point guard, but who knows? Went off to get the Florida to the finals, so you can go ahead and check him out if you want to keep one eye on what's going to be coming around the bend in June with the draft.
Yeah, by the time you hear this, that game will be over. So I think, and
I bet he did it. You know what? I bet he did it. I bet Walter Clayton Jr., I bet he did a repeat performance, and I bet they crushed it.
And there's a chance that his stock continues to rise. I mean, you can in a deep draft, and where age, and we're going to get a lot more into draft stuff in the off season. So we kind of have held off on that mostly because being frustrated, kind of like it's frustrating to not know where they're going to pick. Again, we're going to end up probably doing breakdowns on every player. Clayton, though, is a guy who's kind of like not even on board, I think, within the last like 3 weeks, or was really deep. I know he's at 42-ish now in some mocks. Some people have mocked him higher. I suspect that almost no matter which way this final game goes, that he'll end up like maybe top 30 or something like that. And it's an interesting, maybe that's a guess, but it's always interesting to see, like, you can really raise your stock significantly late season in the NCAA. Like, you can, if you show up in the big stage, that counts for something. Maybe it's not going to push you to top 10 or anything like that. It's not going to push you from off board to top 10. I don't think really anyone can go that far. But into someone taking a shot on you because, you know, you're maybe a little older and you have a bunch of reps and like that's going to play for especially one of those lower first round teams that's already good and can sort of bring an older guy in because you just want to keep the floor pretty high at this point. Like, I think there's a decent story they'll be able to tell themselves for that. Like, he's not a perfect prospect, obviously, but overall, I'm telling you, like, this guy really wasn't on like top 50, 60 boards like a couple weeks. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
It's a great point you make there about the back end of the first round, because these are like established teams, the teams on deep playoff runs that are kind of looking for, like, this guy, Matt, can matter for us right now. So you can fudge the numbers a little bit on age and whether or not it can be a good fit. I'll note before we get into some of these key offseason dates for Brooklyn that when you mentioned, say, maybe he can, top 30. Could he get into that spot there? As it stands right now, just by Tankathon, where they have these guys, you would have only 1, 2, and 3 players, it looks like, between him. So 15 players, only 3 guys would be older than Clayton Jr., to get up that board. And you can go through, like, if you're an elite talent, obviously it works for you and you're going to be in the first round. You're going to get talked about somewhere in that category. And oddly enough, one of the only guys you can really look to would be Johnny Brome out of Auburn, who just got knocked off. Talking about 23 years old, 23-year-old senior, 4-year, full player, and he ends up being still there in that top conversation. So interesting to see what happens with Clayton. And why does it matter for Brooklyn? Guess what? Maybe they'll be not one of the deep playoff run teams, but one of the teams that has picks from deep playoff run teams who ends up turning around and saying, maybe we'll take a look at Clayton Jr., because that would be the ultimate Nets idea. Coming up here in a second, let's take a look at these key off-season dates. Let's remind everybody what Philadelphia's top 6 protections mean this year for the Brooklyn Nets in 27 and 28, and so much more. All coming up here in just one moment.
I will let you know about our friends over at Robinhood Gold. The Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY in your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8x the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here. You've got Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year for a match. Must keep funds in the IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8x the national average. Savings account interest rates claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the season. It's over. So let's talk about the other dates that are going to matter here. Nets will have just a handful more games before we really talk about, as Doug mentioned, this is why we're capable of holding off until the season is over to start talking about prospects, because there's still going to be a pretty big lead up here to a couple of key dates along the way. One thing we can get out of the way, so to speak, is that if the Philadelphia 76ers, who have a pick that will convey first round to the Brooklyn Nets in 2027, but if, meaning when their pick ends up finishing top 6 here, so they avoid having to convey it this season, it'll kick back the Brooklyn Nets first round conveyance to 2028, protected 1 through 8. So some interesting things here. Like, this is what's funny about the element you don't control. If you ask this question at the start of this year, we'd say, oh my goodness, the Nets, they'll be talking about 2027 and having that pick from Philly. Well, now all of a sudden the injuries, and then they go full tank. I don't know where they're going to be in 2028. So there's a world where that top 1 through 8 protected for the Philadelphia, the 2028 pick, That might not be coming to Brooklyn yet, because Philadelphia could be on a very different timeline here as we think about their offseason and what their plans are going to be for their franchise. He's gathering his thoughts right now, and then he's going to unmute himself. He's going to come in hot. Here it comes. Watch out. No, he's going to do it. No, he's going to do it. Guys,
there we go. Get it. That's good.
Good
job by you. No, I had something. I had something go loud in the background, and I was trying to save everybody. I was being nice to everyone, and then I was muted. No, all I said was that I mean, is Embiid even going to be playing in 2028? I don't. There's a strong case that he's not. I mean, I know he went for surgery, and they said he's going to make a full recovery, but this guy has had all kinds of stuff happen to him over the years on a frame that just sure doesn't look like it's the kind of frame that plays till you're 40. So, like, I don't know. When you say the Sixers could look very different, no one expected this season, which has been a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
You can't be super bullish on Embiid going forward for sure. Like, you cannot. Like, there's just no way. There's the body, the frame, the injury history, all the stuff that's happened to him. It's never been awesome, except like the MVP season was awesome, and then it's still totally flamed out in the playoffs. I just think the Sixers could be in a really bad way. PG looked awful this year, right? Like, and after that, it's not like they have. I mean, I guess they've been able to retain some of their draft stuff because they were able to just bring these guys in relatively unscathed, right? Like Maxey they drafted, and Embiid obviously been on the team. So, the coffers don't look super dry for them. So maybe they're able to replenish. But it's hard to be super bullish on them based on, again, absolute train wreck this season.
Yeah.
Completely injury risk superstar to the max. Like probably the riskiest injury guy among that top tier, I think, right? Like, is there anyone among like guys who are in their best? I mean, when he's on his best, he's like top 3 players in the league. But among that group of like the top 10 guys, he's easily the biggest injury risk guy, except for like maybe Kawhi, and I wouldn't even put Kawhi on that level anymore. So I think that you just have to be, it's hard to be super bullish on this team, and they're going to get a top pick this year because these stupid rules. And I don't know. It's just like I sound like I'm whining about it. I'm really not. It's just very funny how this kind of stuff works out. But I don't know. Like, would you be very bullish on the Sixers future? I don't see how you can be really.
No, of course not. It'll be in a interesting, maybe trust the process kind of territory. And one of those teams that, like, we don't talk about this a lot with the Brooklyn Nets. We had the conversation mid-season when it came to Ben Simmons, but making buyout offers and really big dollars for Paul George. You would never possibly. I don't know, unless you think maybe you got some picks that you want to protect for yourself, especially in next year's deep draft class and the year after that. So there'll be a fun.
Oh God.
Fun.
I just looked at the contracts for these guys.
Are they good? Are they team friendly?
Oh
would you say?
In 2028-29, Embiid has a $67 million option. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and say that at age 32, 33, 34, 30, at age 35, Joel Embiid, he's going to be picking that one up. That one, he's going to be picking up the $67 million option. Lock it up. They got PG on a $56.5 million option the year before. He'll be 38. I'm after this season, I'm going to say he's going ahead and pick that up. And then, Maxey, whatever, he's on a high contract, but he's good. So whatever. And pretty young.
I'll tell you what, man, though, like, and then relating it back to the Brooklyn Nets, we know the big swings you take sometimes. Like, everybody kind of said it at the time when they went and got Paul George. Well, hey, you take the swings, but especially now in this moment, even though you're going to get Atlanta top pick and maybe it kind of, reverse engineers works itself out where they get a really talented player. And as these older, maybe injury kind of played guys with really bloated money, maybe they get to balance it with young contracts and young talent. That's fine. But this is the risk you run. You just labeled $110 million of option money that for sure is getting picked up by these two players. So in the event that you don't end up spiking the player that ends up being a real franchise difference maker, you compare with Maxey, right? Like, you turn around next season, we're having a very interesting conversation about them. And it happens. This is what happens when you go out and make big splash moves. Sometimes they pan out. Sometimes it feels like maybe you should have seen the forest for the trees when it comes to the risk, especially around Embiid. Because you and I, by the way, pat ourselves on the back, as we always like to do. We talked about the thing last season the idea of, oh, well, if Embiid was available via trade, would that be a player? When we made our short list, it was a very short list about the guys that we would be willing to throw everything at to go get in another superstar swing. I know we talked about Giannis this season, but Embiid was one that you and I exponentially said, oh, no, you don't touch a big body like that already has mileage and injuries on him. That being the case, there's some other things here that we want to get to. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. I was just going to say that I was like pretty sure I would have said that. I was like, sometimes it's hard to remember. It's hard. I was like, I can't imagine I would have like brought in the hugely bullish Embiid take. I can't stand watching Embiid play. So like, there's like almost no chance where I would. And that there's history with the Nets and stuff. They've had a few little dust ups here along the way, and he just feels kind of impossible to root for. And I actually don't feel that way about many players. There's a couple players out here that I just feel like they'd be very tough guys to root for. And they put the uniform on and whatever. Everyone can get over it. But but Embiid was definitely on that list. Like LaMelo Ball's on that list. Like there's just a couple guys where I'm just like, I just don't. Again, they come in the Nets thing
uniform.
And they put the uniform on, and all of a sudden everything's forgiven. So I also understand how it goes here, but it is one of those things where it's like I was just trying to rack my brain for like there's almost no way that I said we would want to beat, right? Like I just can't imagine that would have come out of my mouth just because I know how I already felt about it.
No, 100%. So a couple of things here, as we mentioned, the season comes to an end on the 13th. The whole entire league will be playing. It won't matter for Brooklyn. They'll be playing against the Knicks. They'll be locked into that third seed. So one more win, they'll need to be locked in the third seed, but it's not going to make a big impact here. So season wraps up on the 13th. What matters then going forward for Brooklyn? A first notable one here, the play-in tournament will be the 15th to the 18th. But starting on April 16th to the 19th is the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament down in Virginia. That's the first postseason draft combine. All college seniors will participate. All 30 teams are there scouting. International leagues will be looking there as well. I don't know what players, when you go over to the draft board, are going to be senior present there. Maybe some guys that fall a little bit off of it. It's more interesting now to think about those dates when you hear international leagues too, because some of these guys are maybe making a bid to continue their professional career, knowing that the NBA in a very deep draft year is going to be hard for them. The other thing there, as the playoffs will begin on the 19th, will be April 23rd. And then we'll get into some of these other interesting ones too when it comes to G League, Chicago, draft lottery. But April 23rd, draft position ties will be broken by the virtual coin toss. And that obviously could have implications because the Nets hold these other picks from other teams into the back end of the first round. So there could be some shuffling here. And while in the moment, it may feel like, who cares? Whatever. You pick 28th, you pick 27th until draft night. Then you get to draft night and you start thinking about the players that you want and guys that you like, and maybe someone's pushing up the board, and you will care if the Nets happen to squeak by an extra pick higher or not. So those are some of the key dates as we think about closing out the month of April before we go into May.
Yeah, May is obviously going to be a big month for evaluating kind of what's going on here. It's super deep draft class. I guess you have a comment here about the international stuff, and we'll get into a little bit more about these dates and like sort of what to expect from a Nets standpoint here in just 1 second. Before that, I'll let you know the show sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health, and traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, maybe from $100 to $250 per session. That is where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you can get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments, folks. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set those boundaries, develop positive coping skills, and have access to support when you need it, and it can make a huge difference in your life. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
All right, so to tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the end of the season, the month ahead, and the 2 months ahead, that'll determine a lot of Brooklyn Nets' fate. Before we get into that, though, international talk. What are your thoughts on that as we have that tournament that'll start to have some eyes from overseas looking at some of these players and their career outlook?
Yeah, I mean, this draft class is very college heavy, like at the top. It's been kind of a mixed bag in recent years around where people are coming from. Still, coming from college by and large, but with the G League, what was it? The G League Unite. What was the group that disbanded? I can't remember now. But the group that disbanded, where a couple of these guys came, like Amin and Asar came from. I'm just totally blanking on the name. And then so between that kind of going the way of the dodo bird, and then a very just sort of elite college draft year between around the very top where these guys just all happen to go, like Flag and Harper and Ace and Edgecombe and all these guys. Like the international group is actually lower, and a few of them have fallen too. Like Nolan Traore was much higher. Like, if you look at mock drafts, all this stuff's subject to change, but he was a borderline top 10 guy or higher. He's kind of fallen down into the middle of the first round. There are some other guys like Seraphin here, but overall, I would say this international group is not super duper strong, but it will be interesting to see if any guys kind of move up the board after this stuff. And we've said this many times. You're going to hear us say this a million times. We're positive. Well, at least I am. We both are positive that this year, more than other years, is there's going to be, I think, great differences organizationally about where people value players. Like, I think for the most part, there's been a pretty chalk line around the tops of drafts. Like that usually tends to get pretty chalky pretty quick, and maybe you get an outlier here or there. But I think the middle of the first round is going to be all over the place, and in a good way, because there's just a lot of good players here. And so I think it's going to be an awesome, awesome draft night, just because I think we'll get chalk at the top. Like obviously with Flag, I think Dylan Harper seems like he's locked into the 2 sort of no matter what. I think even after that, my guess is internal evaluations start changing kind of quickly, where people think about Ace Bailey and some of these other guys. And I think it's just going to be awesome. There's just going to be, I think you're going to see arguments. You're going to see different boards evaluating players differently. I think you're going to see a much wider range of possible ways that this shakes out over the next month. And I think it's going to be interesting, where I think you're going to see I've already seen it. Like you're going to see some draft people take stands and be like, no, this guy should be higher. Like this guy should be lower. Because I think this is the year to do it, because there's so much drafted,
be exalted in their proclamation of this team X just got the steal of the draft, right? Should have been a lottery pick, but they're picking him mid-20s, right? Like should have been whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a guy that you think should have gone in the middle rounds, and you are a Boston, you're an OKC, one of the teams are going to go to the finals potentially, and you go, oh, not only in the finals, you also just sneakily got one of the best players maybe you could have gotten in the back end 15 of the first round of the draft. And just to clarify for you, I'll let you jump back in, but just there's only 6 players. It doesn't mean some guys are international born and they're playing, for colleges, but there's only 6 players. Nobody in the lottery played outside of the college ranks, top 14 players. And then there's only 6 from 15 to 30 that are international players. I think 4 out of France. And this is by Tankathon, Noah Penda there at 30 out of France as well, playing for La Mansarth. So there's that is relative to recent years, to your point. That is a very small international player pool, especially in a deep draft class, which is, it doesn't matter where the players come from, but I think it's really nice to see that the college game, maybe because they're getting paid, is now producing a lot of the higher talent coming out in the draft, at least as it stands right now.
And I think too, yes, agreed. And I think the money matters here also, where it's like you're highly incentivized to play in college, right? And you're sort of to some degree highly incentivized to kind of keep moving around to get paid, which I know the coaches hate, but coaches don't seem to be giving back their fat paychecks when they're complaining about it. So it's hard for me to, oh dude, I can't even stand this. I'm not even going to go into it, but I've heard a couple of these coaches bitching about this. It's like, dude, please
get real,
please with this. Like, you make $5.5 million a year. I mean, can we stop crying about these guys playing, like getting paid? I mean, it's just enough already. I have no tolerance for these coaches that complain about how annoying the transfer portal is. I mean, just get bent with that complaint. My goodness gracious. All right. So anyway, with the draft thing, I think that, like, unlike other years where it didn't really pay to take stands on guys in some of these other drafts, because the drafts simply weren't deep enough to bother. Like, because like there were no superstar talents sitting in the middle rounds.
Right.
Like this year, I'm not even saying they're superstar talents, but you can definitely take stands on a couple of these guys where you could look really correct. Like there's guys in this draft where if you went out on a limb, a good example is like Hugo Gonzalez. Hugo Gonzalez has dropped like a ton over the course of this year. He was like mocked like 5 or 6, right, to start the year. He's dropped like in the 20s now. That's a guy where it's like, well, you're up there for a reason at some point. Like someone's going to think that he should be higher. Maybe consensus doesn't think they should be higher, but maybe not him, but guys like him. Like there's been a great reshift outside of the top guys. The top guys are pretty set in a stone here. But after this, the top has shifted like pretty considerably since the beginning of the year, but not because like it's a weak draft, because it's so strong. You can make strong cases for some of these other guys. So I think that this year, more than others, I'm repeating myself now, but more than other years, you're going to see guys take huge stands on stuff, which also means you're just going to see internal evaluations vary wildly. And there's no way they're telling anybody these evaluations. Like they're going to keep it very close to the vest because they're going to want to draft their guys or trade for them or whatever. So I think it's going to be fascinating from that standpoint.
No, and Danny Wolf to me was the Michigan center product that I think is a fascinating guy. Switched schools, kind of changed style of play, position. He's a big point, can run the point-ish, can facilitate, also has a little outside shot. He's not quite the most athletic, whatever. And he's in the 20s right now. But he's the kind of guy that I guarantee you will hear somebody, whoever it may be, is going to come out and say, why isn't this player considered to be higher in the draft process right now, given the versatility that he presents? Okay, maybe all the measurables aren't quite perfect from an athletic standpoint, but he can do all these things. And by the way, Doug and I are going to put our feather, our pen, underline, double circle score a couple of these players. And if we're right, oh, baby, you're going to hear about it. And if we're wrong, we'll move on to the next topic because there's nothing wrong with that. We try to keep the show moving when we're doing this kind of stuff, guys.
I remember the times where I was like, yeah, Desmond Bain's going to be awesome. I remember that one very clearly. Now, we did draft grades on a lot of these guys. No point in going back and looking at all of them. I'm just going to tell you, I remember saying things like, Desmond Bain's NBA ready right now. I remember that. Yeah. We have receipts on that one. And I do remember saying Jet Howard, I wouldn't draft him very high. Again, no reason to look back at the whole resume here. But those ones, if I were to just pick two eeny, meeny, miny Desmond Bain, you know what I mean? That one is easy for me to remember.
Incidentally, when you go to apply for a job and they say, hey, what are some resume highlights? Yeah, you're going to want to pull the gems out, folks. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to move the needle on this thing. So a couple of quick things here as we talk about these dates, because I do want to get them. Then actually one note about the college. We talk about players getting paid now. When we look over at this, you're going to get into the month of May. You're going to end up having, by the way, April 26th is the early entry deadline for the NBA draft, but then we get to it. May 9th through May 11th. That's the G League Combine in Chicago. You're going to have G League as well as NBA teams will be on hand for that. Then you get to May 12th on that weekend, which will be the lottery poll. So 1 month and 5 days from now, God, I'm good at math, we will be sitting here talking about exactly where the Brooklyn Nets are picking. We're going to know where those little odds went. If the percentages were right, wrong, indifferent, we'll get to go ahead and wave goodbye or maybe freak out, depending on which part of the fan base you're in, about where they end up landing. And then we can really start to drill down on who is the best fit for them at pick 6, at pick 5, at first overall. We don't know if they're going to get there. Maybe they will. So those will be some of the interesting dates to keep an eye on, obviously. And then it'll be another month before we get all the way into the actual NBA draft. And there's a Euro camp in between there as well at the end of May. So there's a lot going on there. The one note I just wanted to put out here was that there was I don't want to butcher this, but a $2.8 billion settlement, which goes back to, I think, 2016 or 2018, where past college players are going to get a little bit of cut of that pie. Now with the NIL deal, so there's been some guys. I think Jalen Wilson was the one who was keeping an eye on it for Brooklyn Nets players. Noah Clowney shouted him out as being like, yeah, he was on top of it because I forget emails and I don't pay attention to it. So they have retroactively gone back and said, yeah, there was a ton of money getting made. And just when you brought up the thing about the coaches, I at least want to give the tip of the cap that some of these guys that may not see second NBA contracts or are seeing second NBA contracts, but the NBA landscape looks different now for those marginalized players, right? Superstar talent, and then everybody else. These dollars matter. So it was good to see that at least in some regard, they're getting some money into these players' pockets because it's not just starts now. What about every single player that got you to that point before they went pro?
Of course. I've been saying this I will say among the things that I've been not unwavering on for definitely 20 years has been these guys should be getting paid. It's a total joke. The total joke that even these dumb coaches are even like Steve Alford complained about it. Come on, please. Please, enough.
It's almost impressive to voice your disgust toward
it's disgusting. Paid. It's disgusting. Yeah. It's disgusting that these guys complain about it. These guys traded on these guys forever and made it impossible for these
had
superstar
punitive damage in
celebrity
place when
guys.
they wanted to switch schools because maybe they weren't getting the opportunity. Well, you can do
Total
that,
joke.
but you won't get to play for a year, and then you'll be super old. So then when you want to go pro, the NBA will look at you and say, 23 years old, do we really want to take a chance on you? I mean, really damaging career prospects for 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids while you're lining your pockets. I mean, yeah, we could.
And by the way, last thing on this, because I didn't really want to get into this, and people that are saying, well, it like screws it up and all these freshmen leave after a year, it's like, that's your problem. Like, figure it out. Like, make a way that they should have figured out a better system to like get guys paid so they are incentivized to stay or stay at the same school. They screwed it. They screwed up the beginning and they screwed up the end. So cry me a river.
Right.
Like,
shame on you. Shame on you. Sorry.
Yeah, like you did the wrong thing for 50 years. And then when you got a chance to do the right thing, they screwed that part up too. So it's like, whatever. Who can feel bad for these guys wanting to leave? Like, anyone with their head on straight would go and get more money or go to the NBA and get paid. It's like hilarious to consider, to think otherwise. Okay, well, on that note, everyone knows what my triggers are, and this is one of them. So
another lovely day.
If you want to, look, we've been on this thing. Just like and subscribe to the show. It's easy. Like and subscribe to the show. Like and subscribe over YouTube. Leave a comment. Fan Take Friday.
Yep.
We're gonna get into some YouTube comments for this week, for Fan Take Friday over the next couple of weeks too, just because the season's winding down. Look, like there's 4 games left. It is what it is. There's plenty to talk about, but we're gonna get into some fan stuff. So make sure you're leaving comments over on YouTube. I don't think I can tell if you subscribe or not, but assume that I can. So subscribe and then subscribe and then leave a comment, and then it's game on.
I'll be checking profiles to see whether or not you are subscribed and commenting. That's the only way that we work this thing. And oh, by the way, man, how do you nurture a positive attitude when all the statistics say that you're a dead man? You go to work. And that, I will say somewhat ironically, is Patrick Swayze. But
why is that ironic? Because he's dead?
Well, yeah, because he died. So, statistically speaking, he's dead, but he can't go to work.
Well, it'll be missed. One of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Oh.